Thank you, Andrew, and we are live with Governor Pete Ricketts. And Governor, good morning. Always great to talk with you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on, Steve.
Your second annual Ag Conference, your second event, 28th annual overall. What's the mood of the producers, the farmers, the ranchers that you've talked here to in the last couple of days?
Well, there's a fair amount of concern about where commodity prices are. Obviously, commodity prices are down or flat, and one of the biggest concerns that people talk to me about continues to be property taxes. While commodity prices are down or flat, property taxes continue to rise, and that puts a big squeeze on our producers.
And we'll get to that in just a second. Are producers overall upbeat that things are still manageable, though?
Yeah, I think people think they can manage through it. Certainly cycles are something that goes along with all commodities. And the long-term outlook for agriculture is very bright. If you look at where world demographics are going, rising standards of living, the opportunity to be able to add value to our agriculture and our commodities here, the long-term trends are very bright.
You mentioned commodity prices and property taxes being challenges. At one point, the kind of the blended producer was in good shape because commodity prices were low, but yet livestock prices were holding pretty steady or even on the rise. They've kind of leveled off now, so it's really tough for even the blended producer in this era.
Yeah, you look at beef prices, I think are down 17% year over year. Hog prices are down 16%. So I think you're right. It's not as much of a hedge, but still is a wise thing to do to have layers of income coming in off that family farm to help cushion and be more diversified.
When it comes to Nebraska agriculture, we talked about the challenges, the issues, but what about the strengths, the things that kind of make Nebraska ag go?
Well, you know, actually it was one of the things that yesterday we had a speaker talking about future trends and revolutions. And the speaker was very upbeat on the United States in general and Nebraska in particular because of our natural resources and the governance structures we have here, the fact that we actually have a great system of regulating, so for instance our water. We've got local control there. We've got great resources in our water. We're the largest irrigated state in the country. Just, again, the practices that our farmers and ranchers use to conserve the land and take care of their animals. So, again, we've got a lot going for us in Nebraska here. We're really kind of in the catbird seat to take advantage of these demographic trends.
You mentioned a couple of minutes ago property taxes still being one of the top concerns of farmers, ranchers, ag producers. We heard yesterday from Senator Glore and the Revenue Committee that they're still kind of working on 958 and some challenges with that. Your reaction?
Well, we are continuing to work with Senator Glore, when I say we, my office, and the senators that are on the Revenue Committee and other senators who have ideas on property tax relief. And I think it's absolutely vital that we get something out of committee this year and onto the floor to build support and get it to my desk to sign. There's a lot of ideas out there. We've got to get behind one idea, and we can't let the perfect become the enemy of the good. The bills that I put out there with Senator Glore and Senator Sullivan, folks have said, oh, we're doing too much to control spending. Other folks said we're not doing enough to give property tax relief. But I think the important thing is we've got to make incremental progress this year, which is why I think it's so important we get a bill out of committee and get it on the floor.
Unintended consequences seems to be the theme that a lot of cities, counties, schools are talking about with 958 and the inability to carry over unused budget authority, inability to mention interlocal agreements or to include those in both budgets. In the case of Kearney, talking about bonding issues, having to take them to the voter every time you have a major project, as opposed to the way it is now when you can take that from the reserve and that unused authority. Your response to all that?
Well, it really just drives voter accountability. If you want to exceed your budget, whether it's the levy lid or the restrictions on the budget, you can always go back and ask for a vote of the people to get that done. And that's part of the system of checks and balances we have, and I think creates greater accountability and transparency. So I think for larger capital projects, it's absolutely appropriate. Now, having said that, certainly if there's changes or amendments to these bills to make them even better, Senator Glore and I are certainly open to those sort of things, and Senator Sullivan as well. We haven't seen that from the cities and counties coming back with specific ideas on those things, but we're certainly open to those amendments.
And what are the farmers and ranchers saying about your proposals? I guess they're probably fairly anxious to try and get that 3% lock into the state budget.
Well, certainly I hear a lot of concern from farmers and ranchers about property taxes. They want to see something get done this year. So they're very supportive of my bills. The Nebraska Cattlemen and the Nebraska Farm Bureau have both been proponents of my bills. get to when we had testimony on them in front of the legislature. So it really does say that we need to get something done.
Now, other things that are in front of the legislature, another one of your proposals, the Transportation Infrastructure Bank. Pretty good hearing during the committee, though one senator, or a couple of senators, a little nervous about the take from the reserve, if you will, to start that. Your response to that?
Well, I think there's a little bit of misconception about how that would work. It was up to $150 million over a period of 8 years. So this was not taking it out all at once. It was only as needed and certified by the Director of Roads. And if you look at our cash reserve right now, which is over $700 million, if you look around the country, we are at the very high end of what states have for a cash reserve. Most states have around 8.5% or 9% in their cash reserve of their annual budget, and that, if we were to look at that, would put us at like $365 million, not over $700 million. So I think there is absolutely room for us to be able to, for these one-time capital expenses for roads, be able to move that out of the cash reserve and into this infrastructure bank to accelerate that work on our expressway system.
A little talk statewide, the amount that goes to the counties. I think some county officials have said it's about a bridge per county, but it's better than no bridges per county, I guess.
Well, again, I think that we can't let the perfect become the enemy of the good here. That we've certainly, every county is going to be a little bit different with regard to their needs. But part of our infrastructure bank idea is to create a fund so counties could apply to get matching funds from the state to be able to address their issues with the bridges. And again, that's incremental progress in making that happen.
Other things, the Medicaid expansion will be before the legislature again here. It looks like it's probably going to get out of committee. And you've spoken frequently about the problems that presents based on the Arkansas model and the Arkansas experience.
Yeah, the bill that Senator McAllister is putting forward really is a failed model from Arkansas. In Arkansas, in just 6 months, it was over $137 million, or 61% over budget. It led to the fact that in Arkansas now, 40% of the state's population is on Medicaid. And that's not what Medicaid was designed for. Medicaid was designed to take care of vulnerable populations, such as pregnant women, children, disabled, the elderly. And we're really getting away from that if we expand it to 40% of the population and making it more difficult for those vulnerable populations to get care. So this is really going the wrong way. If you look at how it applied here in Nebraska, it would cost us over about $1 billion over 10 years, which means we wouldn't have money for roads or education or other things we want to invest in. And as I said, it would make it more difficult for those vulnerable populations to get care. So I think it's a bad bill. It is too big a risk for Nebraska taxpayers. And certainly when we know there's going to be a new administration next year and the rules will change, why would we rush in and do this? It just doesn't make any sense.
Other legislation you're a little concerned about, I know Senator Chambers, an aid in dying bill as he calls it. It's assisted suicide is what it is, and I know you're very strong pro-life.
Yeah, I'm very much against that bill. I think it really is damaging for our medical profession to ask doctors whose role is to help save and heal life to now make subjective judgments about when to end life. That really is just the diametrically opposed to what they're supposed to be doing. And it can also lead to really bad impacts on our society as we start saying it's okay for some people to start having assisted suicide. If you take that farther, as in some countries like I think in the Netherlands, now you've got involuntary assisted suicide. So I think it can have a hugely damaging effect on your society as well.
National headline today is Trump versus the entire GOP Republican establishment. As I sat here and listened to you talk, obviously you're a fairly conservative governor. Is there this Republican establishment group that has these conference calls and decides what they're going to do on a regular basis? Because that seems to be what people think out there.
No, there really isn't. I was a member of the Republican National Committee, and the Republican Party is very decentralized. It's really run by the people who show up in the local states. And as one of the RNC members, I was one of 3 from Nebraska who represented our state to the national body. But it is a very decentralized organization. There's no group of people pulling the strings here. So I think what you're seeing, though, is that Republicans are very concerned about some of the things that have happened over the course of the last few days, and really kind of coalescing that, saying that hey, these things are just not acceptable. If you don't come out and just outright, reject the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, we're not that. That's not who we are as the Republican Party. We were founded to, if you go back to our history, to bring about the abolition of slavery, for crying out loud. So it really is something that doesn't represent us when we have one of our candidates that doesn't take a strong stand against the KKK.
You've stayed out of the fray. Is Donald Trump disaster if nominated for the Republican Party?
Well, we've got a lot of time left to get it to a nominee, and Donald Trump only has a majority, or has most of the votes so far, but not enough votes to get the nominee yet. So we've still got to see how this campaign plays out and see where it goes.
Governor, great to talk with you. I think you were due for a 10:35 panel or a speech.
I've got to go introduce somebody, but yes.
So I'll let you go. We'll get Ag Director Eyeball to slide into your chair.
All right, great. Hey, thanks a lot, Steve. Good seeing you too.
We'll take
Appreciate
a break.
your time.
Take a short break, and we'll come back with the State Ag Director, Greg Eyeball, in just a moment.
Thank you.
Yep, Greg.
Little 5 minutes late, getting 2 breaks.
Okay.
So you'll be fine.
Okay, great.
Thanks,
Hey, thanks a
Governor.
lot.
Appreciate
Good
it.
seeing you.
Yep.
Keep it short if you can, because Greg's going to go too.